Hey guys, remember to like the video and hit subscribe.
And as I've watched all this unfold, I've been wondering how Elon Musk has evolved in the way he has. How did he go from conventional Obama-era liberal, worried about climate change and who wanted to go to Mars, to right-wing conspiratorial meme lord, working to elect the far-right in Germany?
The future of civilization could hang on this election.
And shred the federal government in the United States.
Yes!
What led to this transition, this evolution for Elon Musk? And what actual strategies is he bringing to the government that he now seems to have quite a lot of control over? To talk about all this, I want to invite Kara Swisher on the show. Kara is one of the great tech reporters of the age. She's been covering Musk for many, many years, along with many of the other tech CEOs who become such key political figures now. She's, of course, a host of the great podcast On with Kara Swisher and Pivot, which she co-hosts with Scott Galloway. As always, my email, ezratimes.com. Kara Swisher, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I've never been here, but
you've been on my show before.
I have not.
Yes, you have. I'm gonna go back and show you.
Oh.
Oh, I feel like he stole my idea. No, I'm sure other people have done this. Having the camera switch and then the camera is just a person on a laptop.
Well, that's as I suggested you do podcasting.
Good
You've done
idea.
rather well, I would say.
A masterclass in interviewing from Kara Swisher, it was called.
Wow, I must have forgotten it.
I can't. It was such a seminal moment. Well, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
How do you describe the role Elon Musk has been playing in the federal government in the first weeks of Donald Trump's second term?
Well, a little more strongly than the New York Times did. They're sort of treating it like isn't this an interesting person walking through. I think he's a one-man wrecking ball, really, and he's being used by Trump for that purpose. He's, there's lots of ways you could use metaphors. You could say junkyard dog. He's the one sort of taking all the flack, going in and breaking things. And you could be funny and call it Wreck-It Ralph. I don't think it's particularly funny or the right way to do it or constitutionally sound. But that's the kind of thing. He's going in there like he does with his companies and doing the exact same thing. He's got a series of moves that he makes every single time, and he's doing them writ large on the federal government.
Walk me through the moves. What is his playbook?
Well, it's changed and morphed over the years, but always drama, always a massive amount of drama centered on him. That tends to be the thing he does. When he's in he can be very dramatic in a very poignant way. Like one time there's a period where he was very worried about the fate of Tesla, if you remember, and he was sleeping on the floor there, and he actually gave an interview in the New York Times where he seemed to cry. He seemed very emotional, and at one point when we were talking, this was, I think, off camera, he said, if Tesla doesn't survive, the human race is doomed, which I felt was a little dramatic, and I thought, wow, this is what man in his 40s who thinks that he's the center of the universe. And so it always has that element of drama. Like it has to be that, and he has to be at the center. I think he's greatly informed by video games. And so he's sort of, someone described him to me as Ready Player One, and everybody else is an NPC, which is a non-player character. So he always has to be the hero or the person who matters the most. And sometimes he does, and sometimes he's engineered it. So, just like getting the founder role when he's not actually the founder, or rewriting history or using PR to make himself the founder. So he understands the hero's journey kind of thing really rather well. He also, the stakes have to be very high, and if it doesn't work, we're doomed kind of thing. So he uses language like that of doom. He tends to overstate the problems when most companies have problems, but everything is a disaster here and I'm here to fix it. Or everything sucks and everybody previously is criminal or evil. Word he likes to use a lot, but he uses the terms like evil. And in one tweet, he called Yoel Roth, who was head of trust and safety at Twitter, who he did like until he quit, and then he became evil. In one tweet, he called him evil, and I was seething with hate, which is really dramatic and ridiculous. I'm not seething with hate.
Very Trumpian.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I think he means it, though. I think Trump sometimes is just doing it for show, showman, a reality show kind of thing.
So there's a story that Musk tells, a sort of dramatic story. It's him against evildoers, but there's also mechanics, right? He has people, lieutenants, fan out to key points.
One thing I really don't like with this administration is it's on top of the 50 billion other horrendous and horrible things that are going on, you have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out what the f do they even mean? Are they serious here? Is this a joke? When Trump says he wants to take over Canada as the 51st state, is that serious? Is that an intimidation and bullying thing? Is it some stupid negotiating thing? Is it signaling some other idea? Is it literally just him being bored in a meme? You have to do this with every single person involved in this administration. I don't know what the fuck. I guess it's part of the propaganda strategy, right? Is to make everybody feel ungrounded and unsure of anything.
Dramatic story. It's him against evildoers, but there's also mechanics, right? He has people, lieutenants, fan out to key points. One thing we're seeing right now with what Musk is doing in the federal government is an identification of choke points of information and money. The Treasury payment system, the Office of Personnel Management, which is a place where Musk has installed trusted aides, and they're using that as a way to fan out across the federal workforce. So tell me a bit, but beneath the story Musk tells, the grand narrative, when he takes things over and what he's brought from that to the federal government, what does he actually have the people under him do? What is the theory of action?
Well, he has people around him that are just enablers. They're sort of all these Silicon Valley people do, and all his minions and their minions. They're all lesser than he is in some fashion, and they all look up to him. They're typically younger. They laugh at his jokes. Sometimes when he apologizes for a joke, which is not very often. he said people around me thought it was funny. Well, they all do, because they're like, to be in the room is to watch it happen. When he was being interviewed at Code once, he had a couple of them there, and he's told a really bad joke, and they all went like that. And I was like, that's not funny. I was like, I'm sorry, did I miss the joke? And they looked at me like I had three heads. And what they do is, it's not that hard to figure out choke points, right? This is where we need to be. And then they go into it in this way that is, violating of typical rules. And I don't mean necessarily laws, although I suspect many laws may have been broken here, but not caring about breaking laws. And so they go in sort of full force and question, let me see your code. Why can't we get in? We're getting in. We have the law. We have federal marshals. Let's see what they'll do. And that is a really big quality that he has. Let's say things and wait for them to sue us, or wait for them to stop us. They won't stop us. And again, very much like Trump, the people don't stop you. We just operate on a set of, polite rules in society, and they just barrel right through them.
I want to zoom in on that breaking of rules, because I think something Musk understands, Trump has understood in different ways, is that at high levels of society, the recourse for breaking a law, breaking a rule is legal. You don't get frog marched out. Typically,
Right.
what happens is somebody sues you. They need to have standing. It works its way through the courts. You have lawyers as well, and it moves slowly.
Right.
And so a lot of law following and rule following is just a norm at the
Correct.
level
It's a
that
norm.
you
That's
follow
exactly
the
right.
laws and you follow the rules. If you don't, you can move much faster than the
That's
courts are
right.
likely to move, right? They can fire all these people, many of them potentially illegally, given civil service protections. And what? They're going to sue over the course of
That is what
6 to
they're
9
thinking.
months or 4 years and maybe get some back pay, right? Corporations do this against people organizing unions all the time.
They do.
But as an insight that a lot of what has constrained other executive branches is not actually a constraint, because by the time the legal system catches up, you've already achieved what you want to achieve.
That's correct.
It's a pretty
The built-in mechanism for this is supposed to be things like temporary restraining orders and things like preliminary injunctions to like, hey, you need to chill right now because shit is fucked. But like if you've got somebody who it's not just one thing, it's 100 things, and they're just like going full speed ahead in every direction, like even a TRO, even a preliminary injunction isn't going to save you here. It's just these guys don't give a fuck about rule of law at all. So it's like, yeah, you're like powerless, and the courts aren't really giving you what you need, because I mean, ignoring even if an injunction or a TR or whatever is granted, like the actual court process could take months or years depending on what's even being sued over. Like I think there are still even a few of those election lawsuits from 2020 might still be alive in some places. Like it takes so long.
pretty profound insight.
Yeah, it is.
Actually, there's a really good lesson to be learned from, I should remember her name. What's her name? Joan Donahue. When we were listening to her talk about her role as the president of the Court of Justice when South Africa was bringing that case, one of the things that she said was people need to be cognizant of what the purpose of a court is. A court is here to hold somebody accountable for wrongdoing or to give some sort of relief to somebody who has had wrong done to them. Like these are your big missions for courts. Courts are not here to solve current ongoing problems or to stop people from committing crimes. That's the executive's job. And so we're in a really weird world where it's the executive is the one that's burning through all the rules. Well, you have your courts as like a check, but a court is not really meant to be a fast-moving body that is trying very quickly to prevent people from breaking future laws and hold them accountable. They have like mechanisms in the form of TR, preliminary injunctions, and I'm sure other tools. They have mechanisms to do this, but these mechanisms are not very robust, and they're not very effective against an executive who's supposed to be the one, arguably, that's enforcing these mechanisms, right? If you get a restraining order against a violent partner for domestic violence, well, let's say the partner comes to your house. Who are you calling to get him to go the fuck away? You're not calling the court. Hello, Judge Casper, can you please come to my house and get this guy away from me? You're calling the executive, you're calling the police. I need the police to come. I need the executive to come and enforce this court order. So you're in a really weird spot where you're trying to use the courts, which by their very nature are not meant to prevent ongoing bad stuff from happening really, or to stop people from breaking laws, but more to hold them accountable for it. When you're relying on courts to restrain the executive, it's not really the role or function of the court, even if it wasn't applied to the executive. So it's a really weird spot to be in, I think. It fundamentally just betrays the role of the judiciary.
That a lot of what has constrained other executive branches is not actually a constraint, because by the time the legal system catches up, you've already achieved what you want to achieve.
That's correct.
It's a pretty profound insight.
Yeah, it is. And if he gets caught, he's willing to pay, right? Like he's willing to go toe to toe legally. And I think what a lot of people are is, I don't want to fight this guy. He has unlimited money, right? Like you have to think twice if you're going. I mean, journalists have to think twice. It's very similar to these media companies settling. CBS has done nothing wrong in this Kamala Harris situation, and yet they're going to pay. It's pretty clear that Meta did nothing wrong with Trump, and yet they're going to pay. You do it to make it go away, or you don't do it at all because of exhaustion. And he understands that. He understands that he can wear them down. And so it is true. If you blow lights, you mostly get away with it, right? Like, you don't always get caught, or if you don't pay bills, or in his business life, let's blow up 90 rockets because the 91st will work. And that's his attitude towards pretty much everything, I can tell.
Although, to be fair to him, it led to some amazing rockets.
It did, but who else gets to, like, look, and then he insults NASA, which is not allowed to blow up rockets. NASA can't blow up rockets because then they blow up one rocket, that's the end of it, right? And so it's a real advantage to be able to blow up rockets and then keep going. You know that Thomas Edison quote? There's a famous quote that they all quote back to me that I have not...
Out of curiosity, are all perms temporarily revoked? Wait, what perms?
Keep going. You know that Thomas Edison quote? There's a famous quote that they all quote back to me that I have not failed. I found 10,000 ways that don't work, whatever. And then you eventually get to it. And so it's very...
I found, wait, what?
I have not failed. I found 10,000 ways that don't work, whatever.
Oh.
And then you eventually get to it. And so it's part of the ethos of tech is that there's no such thing as failure. There's only, it didn't work that time and I'll get the right one next.
But this gets to, I think, the deeper question, because there are all these tactics and strategies, but towards what? When he's blowing up rockets, he was trying to make rockets that work in a certain way, and eventually he did. And I think the world, frankly, is better off for him doing it. Tesla had many failures, but really did make better electric cars than anybody else made and helped.
Destiny, I don't think anyone should be able to remove someone's right to be charged. I see the upsides, but inherently it puts someone else's choice above the judiciary when it comes to punishing people. As a president, being able to be safe from persecution, you mean prosecution, via civil court is already enough, in my opinion. You don't need more power as president. That's not even what I'm talking about. I'm not even talking about the immunity. I'm just saying in general, your executive is the body that is enforcing laws. When the executive starts breaking laws, you're in a very, very, very weird situation. It's not good.
Help the electric vehicle transition.
Oh, you meant to tag someone else. Good job.
Or off for him doing it. Tesla had many failures, but really did make better electric cars than anybody else made and help the electric vehicle transition happen. What does he want now, though? What is this all in service of? What is the vision, in your view, that he's trying to effectuate with all this power that he now wields in the government?
It's not money. Money's not, I hate to say this, I hate it, but it's not that important to many of them, right? You know that. It's not money. Some of them really like money, that's for sure. But it's not money, it's the power that money brings, and it's power to decide. And, I think it started off, I have some good ideas and I'd like to put them into place. And now it's, I have all the ideas on every topic, and therefore what I say goes. It's a very king-like attitude towards things, right? Or that philosopher they like of that we should have a functional CEO running our country that gets to decide everything, and screw Congress, screw the courts. We should have a king, essentially a CEO that has unlimited power. He also does have a really weird sense of mortality in a way that he wants to be legendary, right? Again, go back to video games. But I think he wants the glory of it. He has those images in his head. And that's not by way of excuse, it's by way of explanation, right? That this is how he looks at himself, is on a grand journey of the hero. He's not a hero, by the way, let me be clear.
But I think this gets at what to me is one of the mysteries of Musk, because the ideas that he seems committed to have changed. Peter Thiel, who is contemporary, they co-founded PayPal together, but Thiel has always been pretty far right. You go back to things he was writing at Stanford.
Is the only form of check that really exists then impeachment? The judiciary in the end is powerless to make the executive back down? No, there is no check. To be super ultra clear, I'm sorry if I'm not making this clear enough. There is no check. That's why this is called a constitutional crisis. If the executive decides not to enforce the law, you have nothing you can do. You're fucked. That's why at that point, the military has to step in and the executive has to check itself. The only thing that can save you at that point is some sort of coup, basically, from the military to overthrow a corrupt president. Like the executive is in charge of enforcing the law. Now, if the executive breaks the law because they think they have the right to do something, and then the judiciary checks them, that's okay. But if the executive is breaking the law that they know they have no right to do, and they don't care, they're working with not misunderstandings of the law, but blatant disregard for the law, you're in a constitutional crisis because you have nothing you can do. There's nothing. The executive is meant to enforce the law. So when the executive is willfully breaking the law, it's a coup or revolution stage at that point. There's nothing you can do.
They co-founded PayPal together, but Thiel has always been...
How would an impeachment work? Are you saying that the executive... He could. If the executive is going to ignore the judiciary, why the fuck would he ignore impeachment? What do you mean? At the end of the day, somebody physically has to remove him from office, right?
He seems committed to have changed. Peter Thiel, who is contemporary, they co-founded PayPal together, but Thiel has always been pretty far right. You go back to things he was writing at Stanford. Musk, you go back to, say, the Obama era, he's a kind of standard Obama-era liberal. He has a series of companies that are solving problems that are important to Obama-era liberals. Those companies survive off of Obama-era policies, from government contracts to electric vehicle subsidies, right? Loan guarantees. Tesla saved by an Obama loan guarantee. And I mean, and even in 2017, he joins an advisory board with Trump for Trump, and then he gets back off of it when Trump pulls out of the Paris Climate Accords. So you have someone who is running public-private partnerships, working endlessly with the government, working on things like climate change, and within a very compressed matter of years, moves very, very far to the right. So I agree that he wants power for his ideas, but it has always been a little bit mysterious to me what led to the striking radicalization.
You're right. And during Obama, he was supportive. When he joined that, we texted a lot during that period. He was on the Trump thing, and he was like, they're trying to do an anti-gay thing. I'm going to get in there and stop them. Like, he was very much, I need to be here to change Trump's mind. Only I can change it, kind of thing. He wasn't anti-Trump, but he certainly wasn't pro-Trump. I can tell you that. He was very much he's kind of a con man school of thought with him. Around COVID, I saw a lot of changes, around, but I talked to him quite a lot, and people give me a hard time for having done that. I get it, but he wasn't that off the beaten track before. He was he was megalomaniacal. He was typical of a tech person, but doing more interesting things. But there was a real shift during COVID. I noticed it. He got very upset. He got very overly upset and overly dramatic. Look, if you think your company is critical for the future of the human race, and then California closes it down because of COVID, you get in that mode. That's one. I definitely, he sort of got very unreasonable. And in one interview I did with him, he started saying only a few thousand people or whatever, I don't remember precisely, were going to die from COVID. And he had read all the studies and he knew, and I didn't. He's never liked unions or the government or regulation. That goes way back for all these people. And so it became more profound during COVID, this idea. I think the issues around his trans daughter seem to have affected him quite profoundly. I've noticed that in a number of tech people who have trans children. The second thing I think the Wall Street Journal has correctly reported on is his use of ketamine and other drugs. So I think that was another thing that seemed to have changed him. But although they all use drugs.
I know a lot of people use ketamine. They don't tend to turn that far politically right.
But I think he was doing himself. He was like the world's expert, right? It was also staying up late at night. He has this weird proclivity to be up at 3 a.m. and obsessively. He's got an obsessive personality. We all have that element to us, but he's got it in spades. And the one thing that I think I keep saying this to people, and I said it at the time when Biden did not invite him to that EV summit and invited Mary Barra instead and treated him shabbily, he was very upset, like very. I talked to him a lot about it.
In case of impeachment, the military wouldn't step in on its own. It would just recognize the new acting president as a lawful leader and follow orders, right? I mean, first of all, you're assuming that enough Republicans would go through with the impeachment, which we don't even know that would be the case. And then secondly, we don't know if Trump would allow the impeachment to happen, like physically. Like, who's to say he wouldn't just shut down Congress if they were going to vote on that? Like, who knows, right?
He texted me, and other people did too. Other people noticed it too. And this was a summit that Biden had, and he couldn't invite him because of the union issues. He was very virulently anti-union. So they didn't invite him, and he was very upset, like personally upset, like wounded almost. And I even went as far as to call Steve Ricchetti, who works for Biden, and I said, boy, have you made a mistake. That you should bear hug this guy. I wouldn't be, he's really mad. And, Steve Ricchetti's a nice guy. And he's like, oh, it's the unions. He should understand. He's a big boy. And I was like, no, he's not a big boy.
The Biden people are all very relational. For them to have missed what a relational snub like this could do to somebody with his ego it's a mistake at the kind of politics that they were supposed to be so good at.
Well, the thing is, and Steve's, again, a lovely guy. I actually ran into him at
How can he shut down Congress? Deploy the National Guard there and just lock the doors, say nobody's allowed in. What do you mean?
movie premiere.
Kind of politics that they were supposed to be so good at.
Well, the thing is, and Steve's, again, a lovely guy. I actually ran into him at a movie premiere.
Or more than that, just declare that Congress ought to be shut down, that the Capitol building ought to be shut down. Imagine what the next January 6th would look like, knowing that people like Trump are there to pardon you if you ever get charged with a federal crime, right? How much more emboldened would people be like the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers, whose leaders, all the seditious conspiracy guys, were all pardoned now, and anybody charged with a crime was all pardoned, even the people that committed violence against police officers, right? Who knows how much more emboldened any Trump sycophant on the ground who wants to commit violence to defend their god emperor, would be.
The kind of politics that they were supposed to be so good at.
Well, the thing is, and Steve's, again, a lovely guy. I actually ran into him at a movie premiere for Wicked, and he goes, "Guess you were right." I'm like, "Guess so." It's the way he takes slights is really strange. I've seen it in action, sort of petty anger and slights, and that one really stuck hard. And the Biden people kept tweaking him, and I found that to be you could be like, "So what?" I'm like, "Why would you do that? He actually does deserve the accolades around Tesla, right? So why not just give him that?" And I never understood why they wouldn't, despite the union stuff.
There's a factor you haven't mentioned here, which is Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
So the Wall Street Journal has a piece from years ago where it just is tracking his number of tweets year by year, 2012, 2013, 2014. You begin to see it really explode.
So if/when Trump shuts down Congress, there's no other option than to fight. I don't know. I guess maybe we'll get into this in the whatever Hitler book. But the issue is that there are always other options, but it's almost like a recession in the United States. You can't declare a recession has happened until you've had 2 quarters of negative GDP growth. You can't predict when. You can't say when you're in one. You have to wait until it's already happened. And I guess I worry that we've already crossed the threshold multiple times of stuff where this is not good and it should be stopped, probably with action. I'll use that euphemism. But if you get to the point where Trump is literally locking Congress and not allowing them, then the next argument would probably be, oh, well, if he's locked us out, then nothing is at least happening. And then maybe next time it's in session, then we can impeach him. Or maybe next time, next time he does this, well, then there are going to be real consequences. Or maybe the military, maybe. It's always maybe. It's always something in the future. It's always ambiguous. It's always who knows. But I mean, I don't know if there's ever a definite point of this can't go on, this needs to stop. In my mind, and maybe there's something I'm not understanding structurally or rule-wise, what that one guy said, was it Ezra Klein or was it Scott Galloway? I think it was Galloway. There already needs to be congressmen getting arrested. They should be at these buildings and then trying to break in or already being there and then getting arrested by security when they're not leaving. This should already probably be happening. I don't know why Elon and any of his fat-fingered, disgusting losers are allowed to touch any federal data. They have no right to any of that whatsoever. They should be locked in prison and given electroshock therapy until they forget every single thing they've laid eyes on. Like the fact that that's already happening, and it's just kind of like, oh, well, you know, a judge told them to stop, so hopefully they do for a bit. Like there's already huge problems in them even ever being allowed near any of that. It's disgusting. So, I mean, I don't know.
The Journal has a piece from years ago where it's just tracking his number of tweets year by year, 2012, 2013, 2014. You begin to see it really explode. 2016, 2017, it gets really big, 2018. And I mean, then he's really off to the races.
Yeah.
And there's a lot going on in his use of Twitter. And obviously, he eventually buys Twitter, and we'll talk about that. But clearly, he becomes very influenced by some quite radically right subcultures on Twitter. The part of Twitter he ends up falling into, whether he looks for it or just gets into it, I don't know what the chicken and the egg is here. But he doesn't become a normal Republican. He doesn't become, in some ways, a normal MAGA Republican. He's not like Steve Bannon or something.
No.
He falls into a sort of world of Twitter anons. And
let's start off with joking stuff. Like he liked all those memes, dank memes. He loves dank memes. I
always felt when you know him so much better than I do. I don't know him very well at all, but I always felt when I left his presence a couple times I have been around it, and this was years ago before he was, you know, who he is now. I would tell people he was the smartest 15-year-old boy in the world.
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. Yeah.
And so he got really into the memes, and this was always a real door into a dark right wing on that particular
It always
platform.
is. You know, I have experiences with my own son. Like he loves dank memes. Like he always sends me dank memes or whatever. And you can fall down it. And I think that's what attracted him to Twitter for sure. And then it took off into a much more darker place that other things impacted it. But, you know, he's an addictive personality, clearly, like whether it's to work or hardcore is one of his favorite words, which is I find to be hustle porn. You know, so he's attracted to addiction. And so his Twitter use is, you can watch it, like you can see it. It's manic, and he's a manic person. And I think it's again, not an excuse, but an explanation. He has a manic personality.
So
it's not as simple as saying the military would check him. It's full civil war at that point. I mean, like, really, we don't know. Like, there are things that we can say, but we just don't know. Like, does Donald Trump really have the support of the military? I'm not entirely sure that's true. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if he announced some crazy shit using the military that the military would go along with him. Like, I just don't know. I'm not sure.
It's also a reality that in a way that is unusual among people of his class, he's really good at it, good at social media in the way young people are, not in the way, you know, Barack Obama is, right? You get.
I don't think he's good the way my kids are cringe. They're always like cringe. No,
fair enough, but there's an official voice of social media, right? Yeah. The voice Mark Zuckerberg used to have before he became an Elon Musk imitator online. The voice that, you know, you would get from Obama or Bill Gates. Yeah. And Musk isn't in that voice. He's constantly responding to small follower accounts, and he.
Jesus, holy Christ, true as fuck. NRA accidentally forgets to rise up against tyrannical government. An embarrassed National Rifle Association says it totally forgot to do the one thing it has been saying for years it is solely there to do.
Obama or Bill Gates.
At Destiny, as someone who was in the military, they probably would unless it was directly with U.S. civilians, but that's what it would be for, you know? And that's my understanding from every military guy I've spoken to. And again, I could be totally selection biased in just my own audience, but like law enforcement is not something the military ever wants to do or be involved in. And the idea of the military doing things against American citizens, like, is from what I've been told from people in the military, that would be deeply, deeply uncomfortable with everybody I've talked to that's in the military. You just aside from obvious stuff like MPs or whatever, like you just like the military is not supposed to be deployed against its own citizenry, and that would just be a very uncomfortable situation. Yeah.
And Musk isn't in that voice. He's constantly responding to small follower accounts, and he really does build up an attentional power that he didn't have before it. He begins to really trade in this coin of attention.
He loves attention.
He loves attention, but he's, you know, he uses it to drive meme coins. He begins, I think, to understand in a way other people don't, because he's experimenting with it, what you can turn attention into.
Right.
What set him apart from sort of the other people who superficially looked like him that made him temperamentally suited to doing that?
Well, his manic nature, right? It's got a manic addictive quality to it. And he does have a sense of humor. It's not my sense of humor, and people will hate me for saying this, but it can be rather charming, right? Like when he was on Saturday Night Live.
Look, I know I sometimes say or post strange things, but that's just how my brain works. To anyone I've offended, I just want to say, I reinvented electric cars and I'm sending people to Mars in a rocket ship. Did you think I was also going to be a chill, normal dude?
He was so awkward that it was charming. And other people are going to say Kara loves him, but I don't care. Go watch it. It is. I don't just the way.
You really have all these people in your life who are surprised that when
you brought them, you made them. Oh yes. Oh my God. They're so exhausting. I have to tell you, sometimes the left is so ridiculously censorious. It's kind of like, I don't want to use censorious. That's not. They're just like scoldish. I don't want to use. They're not censoring in any way. But yes, I get a lot of like, you made him. Like you didn't know it. Well, I didn't know how he was treating him.
That's on a scale from 1 to 10. How close do you think the U.S. is from needing Do you think the U.S. is from needing its citizens and or military to rise up against the government? I mean, I don't know. I would say like we're at 7 or above is my feeling. Like there's already illegal shit happening at the behest of the president to our other federal agencies. Like the problem is that it's not even, this is like, I keep reiterating this, it's not just the executive like bullying other branches of government like the judiciary or the legislative. It's literally the president trying to take over the executive, which in some ways is even more scary, I think. Like fighting with his other federal departments. I don't know. It's
his kid. I'm sorry, I didn't know that. And had I known, I would have.
He also didn't make him. The car company was successful because the cars were
I was
good.
covering him as a car manufacturer. Look, that Silicon Valley is I'm not going to make excuses. Silicon Valley has a million people like him. He was very typical, except he was doing more interesting things than other people. So getting back to how he's good at it, I think the people that are very good, and I once wrote a column about in the Times when I was writing for the Times about the two people I thought were very good, which is AOC and Trump, right? They're genuine to themselves, right? Or Kim Kardashian's another person who's like this. You don't have to like any of these people, but boy, are they good at channeling themselves as an image online. And it feels genuine. It feels like them doing it, and it is them doing it. It feels like it's their voice, if that makes sense. People love when someone that famous reacts to them, and then it creates a sensation around them, right? And so then you get a lot of acolytes. Oh my God, Elon Musk responded to me, and he feeds off of that too. And again, he combines the humor. He initially combined humor with that, or insights, right, to interesting things, and then it's very quickly twisted into stuff he doesn't know anything about, and he just pontificates. And that's his favorite thing, is to say all manner of nonsense and inaccuracies about things he doesn't know what he's talking about.
I remember being at Code years ago, and you all had Musk on the stage, and he sort of talked through that he believed in the simulation hypothesis,
Yes,
which is a hypothesis that you should expect that any sufficiently advanced civilization will begin running simulations of the world. There will be more simulations than there will be base realities. And so by a simple matter of arithmetic, we are likely to be living in a simulated world than the real world. And Musk said, he bought this and thought there's a pretty low chance.
He said there's a non-zero chance, and it fascinated him. Again,
well, that's what I was going to get at. Not the simulation. I think people can make too much of whether or not that idea matters. But he has a mind, has always, I think, had a mind that is attracted to unusual ideas. That the things that most people believe are probably wrong. What you can and can't do, what isn't true. And I mean, he's been proven right a number of times, in very, very big, profound ways. Now he's the richest man in the world. I mean, he has the most attention in the world, right? From where you start to end up there, that's going to change your psychology.
Right.
And one thing that then seems true, though, is that he doesn't just get attracted to unusual ideas, but he gets more conspiratorial.
If a tyrannical government has support of a large amount of the public support, they are happy to give up government's standards, rules, norms, etc. How could even they even be defeated? Why do you guys? You paid $20. If a tyrannical government has support of a large amount of the public's support that are happy to give up government's standards, rules, norms, etc., how could they even be defeated in a hypothetical civil war? Okay, sorry. Most coups or things like that are going to have a good amount of public support. I think it's generally pretty rare that like 20 people like, I'm going to coup the government, like they would just get killed afterwards. Like you have to like winning the public support, I think, is part of a successful coup, or at least having an administration that's so unpopular that if they were to get coup, nobody in the public would give a
watch him on Twitter. And I'm curious how you understand that dimension of him.
Well, Kevin Roose did a great thing about that. You go down this rabbit hole. It really is. It can really be, did you know this? Or, everybody is subject to it with the way social media works. That's a mind of technology people. They're like, this could happen. We could go to the moon, right? You have to have that element.
This guy has like 5 cameras on him, I think. I think he has one on the laptop or right above. He's got one that's above it. He's got one below. He's got one from one angle from the side and then one from like 45 degrees. I think a 90, 40. Does he have 5 different cameras on? Watch, pay attention to how many shots are on this guy. The fuck?
To you if you're going to do very difficult things. And so you have to start with that personality. And therefore every single thing is open to question. Why do we do it this way? Why do we do it this way?
So here's one
and
from the
it's
side.
A personality trait
2
I like.
above.
But what happens is when you start to get out to Ukraine or, vaccines or whatever, they have to question everything.
3, this is like dead on.
I always joke about it with my wife. Oh, yet another bold truth teller, right? Like I'm so tired of them. Like I'm here to boldly tell you the truth without any actual information or reporting. And so he's attracted to that idea, like the simulation, like why can't we live on Mars? Not everybody does that. And I think when it starts from that, it starts off from a good place. But often in the social media world, as Kevin correctly put out in that podcast he did, is it goes down into the sort of conspiracy theory avenue really quickly.
But it's a very specific kind of conspiracy theory he gets into. So you have him, he responds to somebody who tweets that Jews, quote, have been pushing the exact kind of dialectical hatred against whites that they claim to want people to stop using against them. And Musk replies, you have said the actual truth. In July 2024, just before he came out in support of Trump, he accused Democrats of, quote, trying to import as many illegal voters as possible.
This is 1 or whatever?
In this way,
This is
I think
2
what is going
over?
on with him is a little bit distinct from a lot of the people who superficially have similar politics, because I think he's really bought into a lot of great replacement theory.
Yes.
A lot
so
of this
have a lot
idea.
of people in Silicon Valley. Let me say, he's not alone.
No, he's not.
He's got a cut like this Curtis Yarvin stuff. They've all sort of been taken by these. It's almost religious if you think about it, right? And so one of the things that I think it goes back to, and I hate to say this, is sad little boy wasn't loved enough as a child, is searching for meaning, right? Is searching for love, searching for, and again, not an excuse, because I think he's become a terrible person and he should get therapy. But when there's easy answers like that, oh, this is why you're so unhappy. Oh, this is why
I think there's 2
the world
more.
is the way
Hold
it
on.
is.
Oh, I might have mixed up this one with a different
scratch
camera.
an itch for these people.
Like that, I thought
it's
there was
a
another
religion.
one.
It's their answer to the world.
Well, I mean, it's also a politics. So Musk is South African. Peter Thiel spent much of his childhood in South Africa. David Sachs is South African. And there's a very distinctive experience
There is.
to being somebody, born in or who lived in South Africa during apartheid, and also then saw apartheid dismantled, saw South Africa change. I've never quite known myself how much weight to put on this interpretation, but it seems relevant. It seems interesting.
Certainly relevant. It's certainly.
There's just one camera, and the cameraman's just moving around really, really fast.
Elon Musk and Sachs, who are three of the most significant figures in the Silicon Valley embrace of Trump, have this very, very distinctive political experience of watching South Africa's white minority move from being in control of the country to a frightened minority in the country.
I mean, there is that element to a lot of these people. And the same thing with Silicon Valley people. Again, when you merge that with the ideas around Silicon Valley, which is highly male, highly, we have all the answers. Why are these silly people in our way? And with the South African thing, I don't know. Like, I don't know what happened there that created this group of people, but you could say that about people who come from Russia or China, or, there's an element of a whole bunch of people who immigrated from India. So, they bring with them the whatever culture happened there. And with South Africa, you can go one of two ways, right? You can go the Athol Fugard way, or you could go in this more this way of longing for past times, I guess, in some fashion.
So Musk goes and buys Twitter. It's a sort of unusual acquisition. He tries to get out of it while it's happening.
Wait, is this a lower camera angle, or is this the head-on one? I can't tell if this is a different camera angle or not.
Yes,
but he does
some fashion.
So Musk goes and buys Twitter. It's a sort of unusual acquisition. He tries to get out of it while it's happening. But he does buy it. And he comes in and he immediately does this huge cutting, just like slashing right through it. And people talk about this as headcount reduction. They talk about it as cutting waste. They talk about it as cutting bone. But what I think when you look back on it now, what it both was in reality and also, and you know more about this than me, but what it becomes culturally in Silicon Valley is the reassertion of control.
That's right.
Of a CEO over an annoying and overly empowered liberal employee base.
This is
Talk a little bit
thing.
about not exactly just what he did, but what the cultural effect of what he did was on his cohort.
Well, I think what was really interesting is a lot of these guys, can I use this in the Times, have tiny dick energy. I don't know what else to say. They want to be big swinging dicks, and they won't do it, right? They won't go there because they're worried about what people will say, or everyone's sort of watching each other. And this guy goes in and just does it. Silicon Valley, the employees run the show. Like, they really do. They like to get their lunches. They like to get their cars, their dry cleaning. They like to speak up. And by the way, they started it. Like Google starting with having the employees talk back every Friday. What do you think was going to happen, right? They're going to be...
Who is Kara Swisher? Did she know Musk? Or I think she's like one of the largest people who's done like interviews of people in the tech world. Like, I think she's well known for interviewing like a ton of different people, including Elon Musk and other people. There might just be 3 camera angles. I was hallucinating the whole time. Whatever.
Facebook having a Friday meeting where Mark Zuckerberg answers employee questions.
I hear you.
And they all create the internal chat software.
Right. Everybody
like
has
Slack
a
and
point of
Teams,
view.
where it allows employees to be speaking in a way that they can sort of organize that speech even without unions.
Right. They gave power to their employees. And I had a discussion, I don't think it was Mark, where I was like, now they're talking back. I'm like, what did you think they were going to do? You indulge children for long enough and give them sugar all day long. They're going to become terrible people. Like, you know what I mean? And so that they were surprised by this is what happened when they created these cultures, I'm always surprised by. So they have all these employees that annoy them. So they let them say whatever they wanted, and then they said whatever they wanted, and then they were annoyed by them saying whatever they wanted. And they found it, very hard to push back because, talent is at a premium in Silicon Valley. So you have to kind of let everybody be themselves, right? And it got annoying for a lot of these people because they had effective control over things. But with Musk, when he did it, you could see everybody in Silicon Valley. They wanted to be him. Oh, he gets to do that. I don't get to do that. I have to listen to my diversity, equity, inclusion people. Like, oh, I hate those people. But he doesn't have to. He can do whatever he wants. And when he did that and cut people, they wanted to do that too.
This feels to me like part of the COVID era radicalization that happened to the Silicon Valley CEO class. Something happening during COVID, during the rise of various reckonings of Me Too, of Black Lives Matter. I really think it has a lot to do with the rise of Slack and Teams and things like that. I think it's a very underrated dimension of what changed the relationship between the bosses and their employees.
True.
It feels to me like a lot of the CEOs just hated their employees. What radicalized them was that they had lost control of their companies.
Right.
And they wanted that control back.
They did.
And that, as much as anything, feels to me like the theory Musk is important.
One of my rules, if you work for me, is you have to add me on every social media account, and then I have to see everybody that you're friends with. You're not allowed to be friends with any other person in my company. And if I see that, then you get blackmailed and extorted, and then night flighted out to the Pacific and dropped off, and you're gone forever.
Reporting out to the government. It's not, he's talking about cutting spending, cutting waste. What he's trying to get for Trump, or for him, is control.
Right. It's sort of the rid me of this annoying priest kind of thing. Like, rid me of these people. Again, it's like a king thing. The way they set up their companies is a kingship, right? Mark Zuckerberg has complete control. He can't be fired. He's there for life, dictator for life, or whatever, the joke you want to make. And so they like that. But it's not, in practice, it doesn't work that way because he's got reporters annoying him, like irritating reporters. He's got, he's got his staff. He's got to at least give a nod to diversity, or else he gets shamed. And he doesn't have the fortitude that Musk has in that regard. And so they themselves are trying to assert themselves in sort of what they consider a man, right? This is the
Is the issue just that people form cliques and act unreasonable? Oh, actually, I have no idea. I don't know. For all the Slack culture stuff they're talking about, I don't know. It could be similar to that one thing that I said before, that I saw this at the casino, and then I knew this from Eve and Rust, that you always have, I used to always call this meme the second meeting, where you'll have a meeting between employees and management where you can express grievances or talk about what's going on. And then after the meeting ends, then the real meeting happens, the second meeting where a smaller group of employees gets together and they just talk management and they shit talk everybody else. And they don't ever actually bring any of these grievances up. They just like are there to gossip, basically. I don't know if like maybe that's what Slack culture is like. But
Musk has in that regard. And so they themselves are trying to assert themselves in sort of what they consider a man, right? This is the definition of what a man is. A lot of them were not considered manly when they were in high school or, sort of Revenge of the Nerds kind of thing. So they are trying to hold on to all these kind of manly cosplaying, I guess. With Mark, it's the stupid chain and the t-shirt, which good luck, it's fine. I think it looks ridiculous, but fine. He likes it. Or the MMA, like I can feel like a man. Like they hold on, or I'm going to hydrofoil, or I'm going to...
How did you deal with the problem second meeting? Well, you have other employees that are friends with you that like inform on you about second meeting people. Then you try to bring up second meeting grievances in primary meetings, and it's just eventually it blows up and comes to a head, and then some people break off. You've got to fire people. It's just I don't know how you deal with it, but or if there's a better way to deal with it.
I'm going to work out. I'm going to show off my muscles. That's what Bezos is doing. Like, here's my muscles. Here's my pretty fiance kind of thing. They're trying to sort of cosplay a version of a man that I think it seems pathetic to me, but I think it gives them great comfort.
Well, one of the Rosetta Stones to me of the intellectual shift happening among this class was, I forgot now exactly when this was, but when Musk and Zuckerberg were talking about having a fight in a cage.
Right.
And this is all, I mean, this has its own funny sub-themes where Zuckerberg is taking it all incredibly earnestly and Musk is clearly mocking him the whole time.
Totally. The whole time.
And so there's like a whole dynamic where like they don't have the cage match, which Zuckerberg would win, but actually Musk wins because what he was doing was making fun of Mark Zuckerberg. But
they didn't like each other. Just to be clear, they didn't like each other.
But then there's a third here. So there's an Elon and Company conference, one of these big CEO tech conferences, and Andreessen is asked about it. And he ends up sending out his answer on his Substack. And he basically says, I think it's great if they fight because we've lost all the masculine virtues of the Greeks. And if it was good enough for the Greeks, it's good enough for us. And one of the things happening, it seems to me, in the right-wing intellectual subculture these guys are increasingly part of, but also among them, is a sense that the world has feminized and that the masculine virtues of aggression, of combat, of conflict, of daring, of risk, of just making decisions and to hell with it has been diminished. And that the thing that is needed is some kind of correction, that modernity is going off the rails because we're becoming womanly and soft. And I guess this class of VCs and tech founders is going to, show us our way back.
Well, they don't like women to start with. Come on. They don't like them to start with. So this is shouldn't be a surprise. They don't like the ladies, like kind of thing.
Well, they intellectualized it is what I think becomes interesting here.
What's interesting about what you're saying, and it's absolutely true. Let's start. They don't have women in their midst. I wrote a piece once say the men and no women of Facebook, and Mark got hurt by it. And I was like, what? I'm just putting up pictures of your management. I don't know what to tell you. Like, you hired them. They're very fixated on what a man is and how to behave. And what's really interesting, especially Mark Andreessen, I mean, if he could jog like 10 feet, I'd be surprised, right? Like talking about the manly virtues. Give me a question.
What are you talking about?
Mark Andreessen. I mean, if he could jog like 10 feet, I'd be
Mark Andreessen? Is that wait, is that the guy? That wasn't the guy on the Lex show. There's a different guy?
surprised, right? Like
hard to keep track. The egg-headed guy? Oh, it is the egg-headed guy. Okay.
With the manly verse. It's really interesting, especially Mark Andreessen. I mean, if he could jog like 10 feet, I'd be surprised, right? Like talking about the manly virtues. Give me a break. I mean, when he said that, I'm like, I could beat him up in 5 seconds. Like, I don't even understand where this comes from. But they, now he's going to challenge me to a fight, whatever. So it's concept of what a man is that is not what a man is, but they've decided it is. Now, if all these people, Elon didn't cosplay a lot like that. Like, he didn't, except now he's trying to wear the cowboy hats and that whole nonsense that he's doing. But he actually didn't as much as they did. And now they sort of take all their cues from his aggression, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, that was the thing I was going to sort of get at with Zuckerberg too. When I think back on that fight they were going to have, and Zuckerberg for a minute seemed to be positing himself as the Elon foil, right? He would challenge him to a fight. He was having Threads. Elon had X, and now you see Zuckerberg copying him. I mean, the way he engages on Threads is the way Elon engages on Twitter.
Yeah, Zuckerberg is such a beta. He's such a beta. I love saying that.
But there is this deep way in which Musk seems to have reset the culture, or at least been the signal that allowed a lot of the people who weren't quite ready to come out and say how they've been feeling themselves to move. He led a lot of the flood towards Trump of tech leaders. And, now is like showing, you can actually turn this into political power in a way that I think nobody quite realized you could do directly. I mean, Peter Thiel, I think, for better or worse, gets a lot of credit for he supported Trump early. He made his bets, but Thiel didn't try to wield the power himself. Thiel makes bets and watches him pay off or not. Yeah. But Musk is going in and showing, it could just be you. You could not only have all this power as a technology CEO, you could be one of the most important celebrities in the world, and you could be functionally shadow president. Like, you didn't figure this out? I figured it out.
Yeah, Zuckerberg hid from the attention, right? Zuckerberg never liked he liked the acclaim, but he never liked the shit that went with it, right? And so
this is something that, I commented on this the other day. This is like a weird thing that's happened to where it feels like billionaires or people generally liked to be kind of behind the scenes. And I don't know if it was over COVID or if it was social media or what, but it changed to where now everybody wants to be like, everybody wants the attention now. Like, they want to be on podcasts. They want to be like on social media. They want everybody to see them constantly and to know who they are and to be like front and center. Like Zuckerberg did his whole fashion redesign and is doing BJJ and is posting YouTube videos and is going on podcast. Like, yeah.
That's why he didn't push all the way through, right? And that was interesting. And Musk does have this guts to do that. Like, I'm going to do it no matter what if I get attacked. And in fact, I eat my attackers for breakfast, right? I love.
Have you ever talked about Thiel on stream? I wonder why not. Is the implication that I'm scared or what? I don't understand what the point of that comment is, but okay.
My attack. Come and get. I'm going to do it no matter what. If I get attacked, in fact, I eat my attackers for breakfast. Right? I love my attack. Come and get me.
Well, this is Trump's personality too. I mean, the thing they seem to me to be is temperamentally actually quite similar. It takes a very unusual personality to be shameless at that level.
Yeah.
The amount of genuine hatred you need to absorb. You know, there's a decision they both made that, you know, if you want to really wield power, you have to be willing to be hated. And one of the things most of us are not willing to do is to be truly hated. And most CEOs are not willing to be truly hated. It seems like bad business if nothing else. That disinhibition is, to me, central to their alliance.
Well, they do care, though. Underneath, Trump wants nothing more than have the New York Times love him. Like, you can feel it, right? Like, you know that the sense of victimhood.
People say this. I don't buy it anymore. Maybe you did once. I don't buy it anymore.
I do. I think they both care quite a bit of what people think. I think they care almost too much what people think. And so I think it fuels their rage in a lot of ways.
I think both of them are right. I think that he wanted to be loved by the New York Times, but if he's not going to be loved by the New York Times, he wants everybody to see that the New York Times is wrong for not loving him. So the New York Times doesn't have to love him as long as there's a bigger crowd of people that now hate the New York Times, that love him and condemn the New York Times for not loving him. I think they're both kind of right. It's just that's the evolution of where they're at right now. Yeah.
I think they will never not. There's a little piece of them that is never not going to care about what people think of them, and they become more and more emboldened by that. It fuels. It's the center of their rocket fuel, I think.
I mean, there might be certainly truth to it as rocket fuel for them. I just think that at a certain point, you lose a belief that these people are even friends you still want to have. And that's, I think, what real radicalization is.
Absolutely.
Radicalization, I think, often takes just the normal pluralistic give and take, we're all in this together, off the table. It becomes an all-out war. And I do think Trump, in a different way, but in some ways a more, I think, intellectualized way, Musk, now see this as all-out war, and you have to gain control. If you don't, I mean, he was on Rogan's show saying, you know, that there'd be no more elections if Trump didn't win this time. I mean, Musk has really gone into the civilizational battle, right? He clearly believes in some level of great replacement theory. He's now trying to get the far-right AFD elected.
God, that was so cringe when it was Brett Weinstein and Joe Rogan. They're like, could you imagine what they would have done if they would have won the election? It's like, Biden has been president for 4 years and nothing happened. What do you mean by that? What a stupid what do you mean? What do you think would have happened that they couldn't literally have just already done? What? Hey, new guy here. What's your general broad view on religion, in government, and the development of that new faith office in the White House? Cringe. Government should exist to protect our right to practice whatever religion we want, but obviously recognizing any state religion or giving deference to some religions is super ultra cringe.
In Germany, trying to get labor out of power in the UK.
It's our own chance. He said that the other day.
And this to me gets it a way that I'm curious if you think he's changed. For a very long time, Elon Musk was that everything is backwards.
I'm so curious to know what this lady thinks, why there are no female billionaires. She's shit-talking men a bit too much. I feel like women like this, in my opinion, just on what I've seen, I feel like women like this are the ultimate masculinity test, because she is one of the most like no bullshit, straight talking people I've ever seen in my life. And I think that if listening to her makes you upset, I think that you're a beta and you're too feminine. I think that my guess is if you were to ask her, I don't know, maybe she has actually answered this, so I'll sound stupid. My guess, if you would ask her, why do you think there are no female billionaires? She'll say, I don't know, women are pussies. And men are set up more for success, probably. And women don't exist enough on the extremes to do what they need to do to be as ruthless and crazy as men are. It would be some shit like that. That'd be my guess. She would just be like incredibly frank with you. I don't think she, like, I don't know if it's, to be fair, maybe this is the only thing you've seen of her and that's your impression, but I seriously doubt she'd be like, well, it's because DEI isn't big enough and feminism hasn't given enough jobs for women. Like, I feel like, I don't think I've ever seen her say anything. I want to be cautious. No, I've seen enough of her. Because I watched her on that Pure show and I was like, wait a second, this woman seems super based.
From it a way that I'm curious if you think he's changed. For a very long time, Elon Musk was that everything is backwards from his belief that eventually the humanity needs to be a interplanetary species.
He does think that.
And, well, I'm sure he does think that, but he sure seems to be more concerned with the demographic balance of the United States and a handful of Northern European countries.
Well, look at all his children. Like, he manifests it himself by having so many children and seemingly not spending time with them except for one, right? He wants to have children, not necessarily be a parent, which I think is an interesting thing to plumb at some point.
So what is the goal that now motivates him? Do you really believe it's still the interplanetary thing, or is it a view that these countries are losing their cultures, and if you lose those cultures, then everything is lost?
I do think it does manifest from the need to get off this planet. I do. I think that's everything. That is the one consistent thing since I met him, which is this idea that civilization is doomed and therefore we need to get off this planet. I think at their heart, they do believe the version of themselves is the greatest version of man, right?
It seems a bit reductionist of her to say Elon and Zuck is because of daddy issues. I can see why people would be put off because of that. I mean, like, yeah, but I mean, the goal is like we have to try to psychoanalyze. This is like the fault of these people, of the right. Like, it's impossible to tell what actually drives them because we've seen now that none of them have any values or principles that seem to align with any of the stuff they said initially. Like, the free speech thing was obviously a massive lie. You can see Elon going crazy for censorship for people he doesn't like. You can see Trump going crazy for filing lawsuits against people who say things about him he doesn't like. So the free speech thing was a total lie. Anything having to do with like Zuckerberg completely 180ing on everything relating to like fact checking and responsible speech. So I guess all of that was a total lie. Like when everybody is constantly 180ing on every single they said, it's like, okay, well, now we have to figure out what's actually driving these people. It's clearly we can't listen to what they say, or we can listen, but we can't take them at face value. We got to figure out what else is going on here. Like, so you're trying to figure out at the end of the day, what's powering these people, you know?
Which would be a white guy supreme kind of thing. I think they actually believe that at their heart. And so you're going to see that manifested in these statements that he makes all the time, which are very clearly, like, I forget what he said, but essentially we need more South Africans here in this country or something like that. And he's always sort of pulling in that direction. I have never heard him express any kind of what I would consider. I've heard different CEOs express racism. His is a different kind. It's more around social engineering and the idea that the best people are being replaced. I think that's really where he lives, which is also racist, of course.